spring right here. That's the retainer spring right there.
Yeah.
And so how much meat of brake pad material is off of that spring.
Oops.
So you can see over here, the meat is
even...
pretty much in line with that.
Yep.
And there's hardly any meat left.
Okay.
You know, and you can kind of look back down there and see. This one
kind of
definitely needs to be replaced. You have all this exposed piston right here. That piston is supposed to be back here when they're new.
Whatevs.
Yeah, whatevs.
Whatevs.
You're using your brakes too much, man.
I know.
You stop slowing down so much.
I should be braver.
So I picked up my Crux in September of 2016, and so now it's May, and I've got about 1,400 miles on it, and it's time to change the brakes. So I did notice that I was having a sticky brake on the front, and the rear was not having a lot of power. So I brought the bike in, and that's what we're going through here. Mike is basically walking through the brake pads and how to tell when they need to be changed. So some of the other things that happened once we were doing this, when we were testing it, we noticed that there was a little bit of problem with shifting, but then the rear hub was actually floating back and forth. So the rear hub was loose. So to do that, we actually had to use these special metal grips, and you put it into the vice grips to grip the circular side of the through axle on the left side or the non-drivetrain side, so that then you can use a wrench to tighten up the through axle on the drivetrain side, which holds the hub in.
They describe it as sintered metal. So metal pad on a metal disc is a much higher friction coefficient. It'll last longer because it's a harder material, but way noisier. Metal on metal is going to screech and squeal all over.
I don't like the sounds of that.
But it's better braking, possibly, and it's longer braking, also possibly. The organic compound is really just think of epoxy with metal particulate in it to act as a friction material, but held within basically two-part epoxy, essentially.
So basically, if you ride your bike a lot, you're going to need to tune it up. One of the big advantages of using Strava or other tracking apps, if you use a Garmin and you use Garmin Connect, is that you can actually track against your equipment, so your bikes, to see how much distance you've put on them. So I am doing a lot of gravel riding, and because I'm doing a lot of gravel riding, I have switched to steel brake pads, which as they heat up, grip better. So while you're going down a long descent, then your braking power will actually increase, not decrease, as you go down the hill. When I go back to racing in the fall, I'm going to switch out these brakes and I'll put organic back on, because I'm going to be racing in wet and muddy conditions. I'm never going to have long descents. I'm just going to have very short ones or very short periods where I need to brake. So the organic brakes are going to be better for that. So learned a lot at the shop today. Keep track of how many miles you're putting on your bike, and then keep track of when you're changing things over, and you'll have a good idea of like how long things are going to last, or especially brakes, how long it is before you need to start checking your brakes for wear so that they can be replaced.